What's good, y'all? What's good? How's it going? What's good out here? Sorry, I wanted to get you guys this video way earlier today. Now that I'm getting back to the regular content and my channel is doing what it's doing, the impressions are going up and all that stuff. I wanted to get back to I just wanted to post this like a little bit earlier basically, but due to unforeseen events earlier today, I got pissed, and like when I get mad, I don't really like posting unless the anger or whatever it is like directed toward the topic of the video. Like I feel that that enhances the video somewhat. So like sometimes I will post when I'm a little bit kind of peeved off, like that single mothers video I did with Laura Ingram on the thumbnail a little bit back. That one I was kind of mad, and then I used that in the video, and I think it really kind of made the video a little bit better, to be honest. But usually I don't like to post when I'm irritated and whatnot, so I didn't post earlier. But I did want to just get a video out today, so I am, even though I'm still kind of a little bit irritated, I am doing this video. The irritation has nothing to do with like the topic of the video, so like hopefully it doesn't bleed into the video here. But today, it's funny actually, when I woke up today, my original topic that I wanted to cover, being as it is the remembrance of Pearl Harbor, December 7th, I wanted to have a video that was like 80 years since Pearl Harbor. Is it still a day that lives in infamy? I wanted that to be the title of the video, and I was basically gonna compare Pearl Harbor and how it's seen in today's like society, and compare that to like 9/11 and how that's seen today, and what happened like due to Pearl Harbor, like what we experienced, like we got into World War II and all that stuff in terms of America, and then 9/11 we got into Afghanistan and Iraq, among other places in the Middle East. Like the whole war on terror stuff happened after 9/11, so I kind of wanted to try to like compare those and then see, okay, like that attack and how it's seen today compared to 9/11 and how it's seen today, and are we going to, because what I was noticing is, people today, we don't necessarily, you don't see Pearl Harbor necessarily like them talking about it on television a lot like you see on 9/11. And even the whole 9/11 thing, it's kind of getting, it's not I remember when I was younger and when the event was more fresh in people's minds, you heard a lot more talk about that stuff, especially on the remembrance of 9/11 like each year. And I'm pretty sure that's how it was with Pearl Harbor too. But as people started getting, as like we got farther and farther away from that in time, and then the whole war happened, and then the people who were around at that time kind of started, I guess for lack of a better phrase, like dying off, or just not being around anymore, or just getting older in general. You probably stopped hearing more, as like things got more removed, people basically just kind of forgot about, like the society in general kind of forgot about it, even though we still remember it today, especially if you go on a History Channel. And actually that brings me to the topic of this video, propaganda. We're finally here. I don't know how long it took me to get to this, but I ended up not doing that video because I watched the History Channel earlier today, and I noticed on the History Channel you'll see all of these events, especially on the Remembrance Days. You're gonna see, because it is the History Channel, right? This is what they specialize in, American propaganda. But I was watching it, and then I was like, I learned a lot about the things that happened that day, and like a little like more about World War II and things like that. But I also noticed how, maybe now that I'm getting older, I'm starting to pick up on these things, but I noticed, and also I'm red pilled and whatnot, but the level of propaganda, like I watched this 2 hour long documentary, like docudrama kind of thing. Like those, it's if you watch the History Channel frequently, like they have a lot of these like docudramas that I find very interesting, which is why I love the History Channel. But just the way that they portrayed the attack on Pearl Harbor, what happened immediately afterward, what happened during the war, and things like that. You couldn't, if you're someone who's red pilled or whatever the hell you want to call it, you couldn't not see, you couldn't not start to like really notice, I guess is the better word. You couldn't not notice the propaganda in it. And it's hard to really pick apart it. Maybe if I was like writing an essay, like a well thought out essay, or even probably just a well thought out script, I'm doing this off the cuff, I would be able to pinpoint exactly what it was, but I don't even really want to do that per se. I just want to like mention how it was propaganda. They did have historically correct events, and they brought in a lot of veterans who actually lived through that, like a lot of survivors who actually were at Pearl Harbor at that time. So those were true stories, and those stories were nuts. This is why I want to talk to veterans more. I always like talking to veterans. When I was in pharmacy school, there was this Vietnam vet who was like the security guard, and I love talking to that guy. Like I love talking to veterans. So that was cool to hear their stories, but just the scripting of it, the scripting was definitely like American biased. And I mean, we are in America, so it is what it is. But just I've been watching these kind of things since I was young, so I was just thinking about how my whole psyche has basically been, because I've loved the History Channel since I was a young dude, like very young guy, like early, like pre-teens. I've been watching History Channel, and and even History Channel shit on YouTube I was watching. So I can just imagine, like I can't even really fathom how much my mind has been molded over time by kind of these things that I've watched, and the fact that I love the History Channel so much these days. You know, like I can't even really imagine how much my mind has been kind of molded by that. In the whole docudrama, they did have some of the bad stuff the U.S. did, like the Japanese internment camps. They talked about that, how they literally on the West Coast. So they did this where they like literally pushed Japanese American citizens out of their homes, out of their neighborhoods, out of schools, shoved them into internment camps. And that's what these honest. Like that goes against the like whole theory of America, like the theory of like personal freedom and shit that people try to support. Some people try to uphold, not necessarily everybody, but some people try to uphold. That like flies in the face of that shit. So we can see, personal like freedom and all that stuff. We gotta fight for it because there's a country that tries to pretend like more about personal freedoms and all that shit, like human rights and stuff. A big part of our history, like in a moment of tension in our history, the exact, like the things that we're not going to deal with. Like when I posted in the last video, that very same thing, like the Uyghur Muslims, what they're doing what the Chinese are doing to them, the Americans did to the Japanese. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Like, you just gotta. They did have them documented, so that was good. But even still, even with that, and then the other things that Americans did bad, they had in there. But it's funny. They had like a lot of the racial stuff. They said, black people, it was an integrated they made it seem like it was like a great thing how they integrated the army after that, because some black dude at Pearl Harbor did a couple of good, like, he was like a valiant soldier essentially in like a moment of tension during Pearl Harbor. So he got, I forgot what it was, some kind of military award, and they were saying, oh, like, we integrated, this was a big step toward integrating the military during World War II and shit. And I'm just like, wait, so it wasn't integrated already, even though you had African Americans fighting in the American Revolution and in the Civil War, etc. So, the propaganda on that to me was heavy. And then they talked about women basically having to build a lot of the, like, they went into manufacturing because the guys were going off to war, so the women took up those jobs and built the, like, automobiles, the planes, the weaponry, and all that stuff. And, all that. And they talked about the women's rights movements, things like that. Man, it is what it is. Like, that personal freedom, they wrapped it all up in a very nice docudrama, so it was interesting to see. And I loved it too. I loved watching that shit. It was very interesting to me. But just the amount that, like, our brains are with propaganda. So I just want to kind of end with this, just like put the mgtow bow on it here. This type of shit pervades just the US society. I was talking to one of my buddies on Discord, and he was saying how America has literally the most sophisticated propaganda. Like, you think Chinese propaganda, you think, all this other bullshit. Like, America literally has, the United States has the biggest propaganda machine in the world. And, like, you can admire it, you can, like, just not like it, you can just actually not even notice it, like most people here do. They don't even notice the propaganda machine. Even I probably miss elements of the propaganda machine, and I probably fall into, like, for example, I claim I'm a capitalist, even though, to be honest, I don't really know if there's a such thing as, like, capitalism. There is in academic textbooks and in theory, but in practice, is there a such thing as capitalism? It's just like communism, to be 100% honest. That's, like, what I think. In practice, there's no real true capitalism, and in practice, there's no real true communism. There's just not. It's always a mix of, like, a bunch of different shit. And you could even go back, even before they had the word capitalism, way before Adam Smith and shit. You go back to ancient Egypt when they had pharaohs and stuff. You could have, if you just wrote, like, some shit about, like capitalism, you called it, let's say you just called it Wealth of Nations, man. Like, whatever. If you wrote that in hieroglyphs or whatever, they could have been using the phrases capitalism and all that crap laissez-faire back then. And then they would have just said, okay, what's in our society and what aligns with that, like, and they would have used it for arguments, like, to and for their positions and all that shit. So to me, like, capitalism, there's no real true thing about it in practice. It's just a theory, just like communism, just like many different things. Like, it's in theory. It's a theory that you can use to make arguments and philosophies about life and shit. It's a philosophy, essentially. Like, to me, capitalism's a philosophy, not necessarily something that you do in practice. Same with communism. But, it may be perhaps valuable nonetheless. Like, philosophies they're not without value. I mean, you could argue they're among some of the most valuable things. But, just, to me, you gotta put that in its proper place. So, the propaganda it definitely affects me too. You probably see it in my videos, but yeah, the propaganda machine. You got, like, the feminists that a lot of mgtows don't like. I just, honestly, I'm not even I don't hate them. I'm not even indifferent, to be honest. I more feel bad for the ones who didn't get what they want, like, especially the ones who, like, they can't have kids anymore. Let's say they might want kids now, but, like, they're kind of older. Like, to me, I just feel bad for the people that got fucked over by, like, feminism and things like that, men and women. But, like, those people, like, so I don't hate them, but the feminists that a lot of y'all mgtows don't dislike, it's just propaganda. They just got affected by propaganda to keep like the economic machine going. Um, like a lot of things, even like a lot of these liberals, SJWs, social justice warriors, whatever you call them, it's just driven by propaganda. Like all these things are to me as propaganda machines. Like even conservatism is a propaganda machine. Most of these things to me are propaganda. Like especially now that I'm kind of like getting older and really starting to try to work through some of this stuff. A lot like you you just gotta try to work through it yourself and get other perspectives. But I on like don't take any of these. At least what I'm doing, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but like for me, I can't take any of these philosophies too much to heart, because just watching things like that History Channel episode, I could watch episodes like that for the rest of the day. They were on for half of the day on History Channel, and I used to do that when I was really trying to learn about some of this stuff when I was younger, and like I had more of a blank slate. I was taking in a lot of this stuff, and if you're not careful, like you won't notice the propaganda in it. You'll just see you'll see it as just true history, which it is. A lot of it is history, and they're accurate things that they're putting out. But you gotta like there's an underlying just subtle propaganda there, to make you like for the example of that history thing, it was basically making you like a American nationalist, like a patriot, however you define that term. You're like making you a nationalist. So just be aware what, like if you're taking in feminism propaganda, be aware that they're like making you a feminist. If you're taking in conservative media, there's a subtle like they want to kind of make you conservative. You know, so yeah, if you're taking in a lot of like just like racial shit, they want to like sway you toward a certain way. So yeah, just that's I just found that interesting, so I wanted to make the video on that. I don't know how much I'll edit it in this. I just wanted to make that video because that was very. I just had to say that. There's a lot of topics I want to cover, so stay tuned. Yeah, like very interesting topics. So now that I'm posting more frequently, I'm gonna bring back some of the more classic mgtow things. We're talking about like women, relationships, family, and like how that affects society in general and stuff like that. Probably birth rates and things like that. I'll start talking about that stuff. I'll intersperse that a little bit more. Now that I've kind of gotten into like the whole creativity era that I wanted to do on the channel, got like a little bit of editing, getting my skills good on that. I'm gonna go back to a little bit more like the more classic mgtow content, so like get prepared for hopefully more people coming in and commenting on the videos, maybe a little bit more views, because that is all the rage on YouTube right now, and it's going to continue. Like I said, all those old videos I posted are still accurate. mgtow will increase with inflation. Inflation is getting worse, and that stuff affects society more than you think. So, you know, understand the propaganda and also understand how this money stuff works, and a lot of things will start making sense to you. Unfortunately, people aren't gonna listen to you when you start. They might even call you like certain names, unfortunately, which that still blows my mind, and I just got confronted with that today. So like that blows my mind when you go down into this whole rabbit hole of like looking at how money works, and then like just being red pilled in general. Probably that encompasses a lot of things. The way like you kind of think you start to forget that you're fringe, because it starts just making a lot of sense to you. So just recognize like you're still like we're kind of still fringe out here. mgtow is growing, but a lot of people that's mgtow, they don't even know the word mgtow, and they wouldn't call themselves that. You know, and it's like gonna be one of those silent things until it's not. It's like gonna be like single mothers, which I'm getting into another video topic, but like it's gonna be like single mothers. It wasn't talked about until it was. It wasn't talked about until it hit critical mass, and then all of a sudden, single mothers were like strong and holding up families and shit. So mgtow, it's not going to be talked about until it is. So it is what it is. But okay, 20-minute video probably here. I'll just leave it there. Hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll see what happens with the editing, and peace out, y'all.